Can you ever imagine the new pope being a Peruvian citizen? It's quite an extraordinary journey, isn't it? Let's deep dive into it. Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take a stack of sources and, well, pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge for you. Oh, and this deep dive is brought to you by Amaru Gourmet Peruvian Cuisine in Brattleboro, Vermont. So today our mission, our focus, is this really unique story, the connection between Pope Leo the XIV and Peru. We've gathered some interesting sources on this. Pope Leo the XIV, born Robert Francis Prevost in Chicago, first Augustinian pope. But the twist, the really fascinating part, his deep, deep roots in Peru.
It really is fascinating. It's one of those, historical threads that makes you stop and think about how global experiences shape people, especially people who end up in such prominent roles.
Yeah.
The idea that the man who would become pope spent, nearly 20 years living and working in Chiclayo, Peru, that's pretty remarkable.
Nearly 20 years. That's not a quick mission trip. That's a huge chunk of his life. So our goal today is really to unpack how Peru, the culture, the people, and the incredible food, how it all shaped the man who now leads the Catholic Church.
Exactly. It really prompts the question, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of impact does that sort of deep immersion, living in a different culture for so long, has on someone's worldview, their values?
Okay, so let's trace this back. How did the journey even begin? Robert Prevost grew up near Chicago, joined the Augustinians at 22, ordained in 82. Seems, well, fairly standard up to that point.
Right, a familiar path for many in religious life. But then comes this pivotal moment in the early 1980s. He gets an assignment to Chiclayo, Peru.
Ah, yes.
And the really interesting part is that apparently it wasn't initially planned as a permanent thing.
Temporary.
Yeah.
That's amazing. How often do these sort of short-term plans just completely change the trajectory of someone's life?
It happens more than you'd think. And those nearly 2 decades in Chiclayo, it wasn't like he was living in a bubble. He was deeply involved, really engaged with the community there on many different levels.
Right. So beyond the, let's say, expected ministry work, what else was he doing day to day? What did that engagement look like?
Well, it was quite multifaceted. Of course, there was the parish ministry side of things, but he also spent a lot of time teaching in seminaries, training future priests. And crucially, he worked very directly with indigenous communities and with people living in marginalized situations.
That kind of direct contact, seeing the daily realities, the struggles, that must have been incredibly formative. It really suggests Peru became much more than just a mission field for him.
Absolutely. Get the distinct sense he wasn't just, ticking off boxes or fulfilling an assignment. He seems to have genuinely woven himself into the fabric of Peruvian life, its rhythms, its challenges.
So it wasn't just about being there physically present. It was about really participating, understanding.
Precisely. And you see that in the effort he put in. He learned the language, became fluent in Spanish, but apparently he even picked up some local dialects, too.
Wow, really? Dialects?
Yeah, which speaks volumes, I think. And he didn't stop there. He consciously studied Peruvian history, looked into the unique ways Catholicism is expressed there. That shows a real commitment to authentic connection, not just superficial engagement.
It's one thing to live somewhere, isn't it? It's quite another to actively try and grasp its soul, its people on that deep a level.
Indeed. And this connection, this deep bond, it wasn't just an internal feeling. It actually became very concrete later on.
Ah, you mean when he became a citizen? That part of the story.
Exactly. There's that quote attributed to him, which is quite powerful. He said something like, "I became Peruvian by heart before I became Peruvian by law."
Peruvian by heart. That really says it all, doesn't it? The legal part came later.
It did. That was in 2015, right? When he was appointed Bishop of Chiclayo. That's when he formally became a naturalized Peruvian citizen.
Which underlines that it wasn't just, paperwork for the job. It felt like a deeply personal statement.
Yes, I think that's the key. It wasn't just fulfilling a requirement for his role as bishop. It seems like it was a very conscious choice, reflecting that genuine affection, that sense of belonging he developed over all those years. He was basically formalizing an identity he already felt deeply.
So he really transitioned, didn't he? From being, say, an American missionary who happened to be a bishop there, to being a truly Peruvian shepherd, connected to his flock in a very fundamental way.
Precisely. That shift in identity is so important to grasp. From an outsider coming to serve to someone who became, part of the community itself, Peru wasn't just a place he lived. It became part of who he is.
Yeah.
And speaking of things becoming part of you, maybe we should talk about his connection to Peruvian cuisine. That seems like a really significant piece of his immersion.
Ah, yes. The food. Peruvian food is just so vibrant, so defining for the culture.
It really is. And it seems clear he developed a real, lasting affection for it.
Absolutely. I read that quote where he described Peruvian food as vibrant, generous, and full of history, and he called it one of the purest expressions of a culture's soul. You can almost taste his enthusiasm.
You really can. And it wasn't just about eating it, was it? Apparently, he got quite involved. Hosted cooking workshops, took part in parish feasts where they'd make all the traditional dishes. Imagine learning from him.
Huh? Learning to cook Peruvian dishes from the future pope? Do we know what skills he picked up? Any specific dishes?
Yeah, the sources mention him learning to make classics like ají de gallina, the creamy, spicy chicken stew.
Oh, I love ají de gallina.
Right, and casalameña, too, that layered potato dish. Real cornerstones of Peruvian cooking.
Those sound amazing, but there's one dish, isn't there, that seems to hold a particular weight for him? Almost symbolic.
Ah, you mean ceviche. Has to be ceviche.
Yes, the national dish, really.
For many, yes. And his connection to it seems to run deeper than just liking the taste. It feels very symbolic for him.
It really does. His description of the first time he tried it, back in Chiclayo, it's so vivid. He said it was like eating the ocean mixed with fire and grace. What a phrase.
Fire and grace. That's pretty poetic for marinated fish. It really captures the impact it had on him. And it seems he came to see ceviche almost as a metaphor for Peru itself.
That's right. He talked about the sharpness of the lime, the heat from the chili, the freshness of the fish, seeing all that as representing Peru's character. Bold, refreshing, complex, but also harmonious.
And how each ingredient might even tell a story about different regions.
It's a really interesting way to look at a dish, isn't it? Seeing the soul of a country reflected in its food.
It is. And this deep love for Peruvian food, especially ceviche, it hasn't faded now that he's in the Vatican, has it?
Doesn't seem like it. His Peruvian connection feels very present. I mean, okay, maybe we won't see ceviche as a standard item on the Vatican menu.
Huh. Probably unlikely as a regular thing, no.
But his identity, that Peruvian heart he talks about, it's clearly integral to who he is now.
Absolutely. And you hear these little anecdotes, right? Whispers about maybe requests for Peruvian touches at certain functions, or maybe even talk of inviting Peruvian chefs over.
Exactly. It shows his heart is still very much connected to Peru.
And you have to imagine, given how deep his experience was, his genuine affection for the country, the culture, the food, he must share those stories, that love, with people around him in the Vatican.
For sure. He talks about his Peruvian heart. It's part of him. So it wouldn't be totally surprising if those conversations, those shared memories of flavors, maybe did lead to, a little taste of Peru popping up in the Apostolic Palace kitchens now and then.
It just really highlights how much our personal histories, our cultural immersions shape us. Doesn't matter who you are, what position you hold.
It's a powerful reminder, yeah, that even global figures have these incredibly personal, formative roots in specific places, specific cultures. And food is just such a potent link back to those places, isn't it? So evocative.
So wrapping up this deep dive, the picture that emerges is really quite clear. Pope Leo XIV's journey, from Chicago, Illinois to becoming Peruvian by heart. It's an extraordinary story. And a very human one.
It truly is. His citizenship, his obvious love for the culture, and especially this passion for the food, for ceviche, it adds this unique, relatable dimension to his papacy.
And it gives you a compelling angle on how our life experiences really do shape leadership, shape how we see the world, even on a global stage. Which leaves us, and leaves you listening, with some interesting things to think about. Like, how does the food of a place you love connect you to it? Does it, play part in shaping your own identity?
Yeah, and that idea, could a single dish, like ceviche was for him, could it really capture the soul of a whole nation or a place?
It's a fascinating thought. What dish does that for you? What food connects you to somewhere special in your life?
Definitely something to ponder.